All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday and happy week of Thanksgiving. We have had a pretty decent price action, I would say, on ES during our extended trading hours. They weren't perfect. We ended up starting the evening with a gap up into our red box, so above the top of our average range. Ended up wicking back down into our yellow box to see that as a little bit of support, and ended up kind of getting a yellow box win. It's a little bit debatable on if we start gapped up on the day, if we kind of consider yellow box void, for example. But anyway, we've been bullish, I would say, pretty much during all of our extended trading hours. We're currently trading at around 6,662.50. So let's see what kind of opportunity we have today. So we're at 6,662. All right. So hopping into fractals, let's look at our wave one daily first. So our vector is currently at 6665 on our wave one and currently trading at 6662. So let's see what we have for the upside in regards to open states and anything like that. So right now we're currently trading above our 50% odds on our wave one daily, which is pretty good for some bullish movement. Um, we have a open state here at 6706.23. That was an open state we made, I think, about last week. It's 9 days old. We do also have one all the way up at 6759.73, which would get us past, pretty well past our 20% odds. So this 6706, it's like a decent amount of ways up there. 40 points away above our 20% odds. This could be a decent opportunity for the day if we can see continued upside. We might want to look at some of our other time frames to see if there's anything up at this 6706 area. But the other thing I want to say on the Wave 1 Daily, we've actually been ranging pretty well for the past several weeks. So we had this really nice extension, several weeks ago, but otherwise we've had a lot of consolidation, had a decent attempt to the upside um, about last week, maybe a week and a half ago. Pretty strong push to the downside to try to reconcile that been rearranged again, which sounds kind of funny, right? Because that it was that Thursday candle we had was like crazy, crazy amount of bearish movement, um, kind of back up into this 20 to 50% area. So from a big picture perspective, we've had really good volatility on ES, but we've actually ranged pretty well. Hey Genius, good morning. We've actually been ranging pretty well on ES, so not really looking to see like 6706 is this like huge rejection point for a large move to the downside. We've had a lot of range, so there could be opportunity there, but we definitely want to look at our smaller time frames to see what we do have going on. So let's hop into our 7 wave 60. Okay, so we were bullish on our wave one daily. We are just barely bullish on our 7 wave 60. So we were under pivot. Sorry, we were under vector and under pivot for a brief moment here, starting at around 4 a.m. We've just creeped right back above pivot, but our vector is still below pivot at 6650. So there's a little bit of a mixed message here on the 7 wave 60. I would say last night we had a little bit of a mess, right? This is 11:24. So let's go look at 11:23 last night. So we started the day, I would say right here. So we were very bullish on the 7 wave 60, kind of at our 10% odds. Had a lot of messy consolidation up here. Vector kind of started to flatten out. We had this really strong measured move down at about 4 a.m. Um, Ended up breaking below pivot, kind of broke right back above it without too much issue, and now we're trading back above vector as well. So one thing I will say is vectors looked okay. Um, Overnight, we kind of started seeing some consolidation and a little bit of messiness. Vector tried to stay supportive here, but when he had that really big measured move down, Vector started getting a little bit disrespected. So um, similarly to how we saw, honestly, on Thursday and Friday last week, Vector on the 7 wave 60 is a little messy. Um, hey, Christopher. I don't really go over NQ. We went over it once last week. We can definitely go over NQ levels. I don't really tend to look at QQQ. I haven't traded options in years, but if NQ is helpful, we can pop through some of those levels to see if we have any confluence on ES. Just let me know. Okay, so 7 wave 60 on ES. The vector, not looking super trustworthy on this, honestly. The other thing I will say, because we're so low and just barely above pivot, The only open state we have is the one that we made on Friday, 67, 69, 77. So 7 wave 60 is a little bit of a area where we could see a lot of upside or a lot of downside. We're currently bullish because we're above pivot and above vector, but we're seeing a little bit of I don't know, a little bit of ambivalence, I would say, on the 7 wave 60. So we'll see what we get if we go into smaller time frames. Okay. So the 20 wave 15 is a pretty similar story. Our vector is below pivot currently, but we are currently trading above pivot. Look at that. So vector's here, 66.46. Here's our pivot at 58, and we're trading up here at around 66.66. So pretty similar story, I would say. Here's this gap up. You can really see this well in the 20 wave 15 from when ETH started. We started above pivot, sorry, above pivot, above vector, very overextended. Attempted to try to stay supportive above vector, but with this large overextension, pretty measured move down. And look at all of this consolidation we saw in the 20 wave 15. Vector was a little supportive, I would say, in general on the 20 wave 15, but it was kind of messy. We've seen Vector kind of pretty much act as anchor all night for the 20 wave 15. So what this is telling me is I'm not going to be taking Vector plays today until we see a specific trend form. Hands are going to be off on Vector until we see some type of trend form and we see some type of consistency of our different waves trading either above pivot or below pivot. Idea like at least right now we're seeing consistency with vector being above below pivot and price being above pivot. Right now we're pretty messy and I think we're pretty unsure on where price is going to go today so far. We do have this open state that we created earlier in the evening or like earlier this morning at 66.82. But otherwise, we're so low on the 20 wave 15 that we have a ways up before there's any sort of opportunity for bounces or, sorry, any opportunity for rejections, I would say. So we're in a little bit of no man's land. We could look at like our 20% odds, which we have at, 67.11. But the only other piece of resistance we're kind of seeing there is like these small little clusters here. This is hardly high probability areas for rejection right now. Let's go look at our 10 wave 15, see if we have anything on these charts. Okay. So the 10 wave 15 showing a little bit of a similar story, or I guess a little bit of a cleaner story, I would say, now that we're looking at our smaller time frames. We saw a lot of messy consolidation all throughout the evening. Hope nobody traded ES last night. Um, we finally saw a move above pivot, and we're seeing vectors start to form a little bit of a trend on the 10 wave 15. The one reason I don't quite trust this trend yet is that we have barely seen vector be supportive on this move up. We saw this one tap of vector right here at like 66.40 at 7:15 this morning. But otherwise, we've been trading well above vector, haven't really come down to try to test it to verify that vector is actually going to be playing supportive on the 10 wave 15. We are kind of approaching our 20% odds. Look at this though. If we can get ourselves above 66.88 on this 10 wave, we have a lot of blank space all the way up to 67.36. We have some open states here at 67.36 and 39. Those seem really, really far away. I want to go back to the wave one daily because I know we had something really, really high up there. Where was it? It was like 60. Oh God, it was 67.59 was the one we were looking at. So still a really huge range if we were to look at something up there. But on our 10 wave 15, not a lot of opportunity, right? We have this open state that we just made. As you guys know, we tend to ignore those open states that we're creating on the current wave that we're trading in because it just simply means that's the current high of where this move up has been. So I don't really see it as anything sort of like resistive because there's nothing stopping us from just continuing above that open state, especially because we're trading under our 20% odds right now. So we do see some stuff at 67.36 to 39, but man, that's far away. And similar to how we were on Friday, the zone we made on Friday was so far away. One of the things that we talked about was if we see those revisions below pivot and then come back above pivot, more often than not, those open states change. And that's exactly what we saw on Friday. I was trading with one of our premium members, Wiley, and we ended up trading in the morning. I stepped away for the day and we were gone for about 2.5 hours. And Wiley was like, hey, we're approaching that level that we mapped. Well, how does it look? And we looked at our charts and we saw that we went below pivot and then came back above pivot. And all of those open states changed to significantly higher. And so all of us were like, all right, that zone's invalid. We're not trading it anymore. So I think because of that lesson learned that we had on Friday, I'm not going to be marking this 67.36 to kind of 50 zone because if we get ourselves back below pivot and then back above pivot, it's going to revise. And what we've seen on all of our bigger time frames is that we're trading so close to pivot right now that the odds of us kind of moving below pivot for a brief amount of time seem pretty high at this point because we've been so consolidating throughout the day. So don't really see anything on the 10 wave 15. Let's go look at the 7 wave 5 real quick. And Chris, I think we will go look at NQ just because of how messy the ES has been. Look at this, guys. The 785 is below pivot. I think it might even be below vector. Look at that. Yeah, look at that. It's below pivot and below vector. So we're here at like 6662 is kind of where we're trading. It's kind of hard to see because it's just a little dot right now. But similar to all the other time frames we've looked at, the 7.5 minute has had a little bit of opportunity for scalping to the downside and to the upside when we've seen these vector revisions. But the one thing I don't like about this now is that the 7.5 minute is the only time frame that's actually below pivot. So we could potentially look to see if there's any open states to the downside that we could trade off of. That could maybe be in confluence with the 50 wave one, but I don't like doing that because our larger time frames are all trading above pivot. So we could look for opportunity for, lower time frames for potential bounces and scalps. But remember, we're not really that overextended on ES from a linear perspective, right? If we go back to our linear chart, we're kind of just trading slightly above our average range here at 48. So there's still a lot of ambivalence, I would say, on the charts. The 7.5 minute is still at this like pivot vector area, just slightly below. We do have some opportunity at 66.52 where our 50% odds are, but if you guys know me, the 7.5 minute and the 50 wave 1 minute, I kind of like ignoring any sort of open states that are any higher than our 20% odds. And this is kind of a good example. So look, here's our 50% odds. We had an open state that we made at 11 p.m. last night. We had an open state that we made at like 7 or 8 p.m. last night. And look at this move down. Like we could have said, oh, wow, there's going to be resistive price action at the start of these two open states. Look, when we had this measured move down, we totally blew through this open state, and this open state on that move down. So on these lower time frames, I don't really like, looking at something that's like just under a 50%. I kind of tend to like looking at 20% or a 10% because odds of it moving to a pretty overextended state are a little bit higher on these low time frames. So we do have this open state at 66.2375 with our 20% odds at 66.24. So there could be potential opportunity there. Let's go see what our 50 wave 1 minute looks like. Okay. Whoa. Oh, so look at this. We're really overextended on the 50 wave 1 minute. Look at how different that is from the 7 wave 5. So we're currently up at our 5% odds on the 50 wave 1 minute, and we're coming back to this vector to potentially act as support. So this morning, vector on the 50 wave 1 has finally created a really clean trend, which is good to see, but kind of supporting that concept of really like messy price action overnight. Look at how horrific this was. We were above, below until we finally saw that measured move up. And I don't think we've technically even seen a single tap of vector. We got close there, but we never actually touched it. And so again, I don't really trust this vector, even though it's in a clean trend. We haven't even attempted to touch a support on the 50 wave 1. And again, going back to potentially seeing some opportunity at like that 66.20 on the 7 wave 5 minute because the 50 wave 1 minute is above pivot and above vector, it doesn't really support our thesis for potential bounces because we're not really going to be seeing any sort of like clean open states to the downside until we get a revision back below pivot. So this is a very horrific Monday from a fractals perspective for a couple reasons, right? We are having inconsistencies on where we're trading at in regards to pivot, right? Look at our large time frames. 20 wave 15 kind of hanging out right by pivot but slightly above it. 10 wave 15 right by pivot. We're a little bit more extended on the 10 wave, but we are above pivot. We go to our 7 wave 5 minute, we're below pivot. But then we go back to our 50 wave 1 minute and we're above pivot. This is telling me that price does not know if it wants to be bullish or bearish, right? Because remember, long waves are creating bullish intention, short waves are creating bearish intention. We're having inconsistency on our wave formation currently. Second reason today's messy, vector's been disrespected, right? On our larger time frames, we saw a lot of consolidation of vector going above and below. And then we even saw our lower time frames like the 50 wave 1 minute never actually even test vector, even though it is currently making a long trend. Look at that. Like barely even a touch except right now. So who knows how it's going to react, right? And then the third reason here is that we just don't see a lot of heavy clusters of open states across various timeframes to find high probability bounce or reject areas. So we're a little bit messy. We can go pop into NQ for just a quick minute. We'll scroll through charts really quickly to see if we have any opportunity. But yes, I'm going to be hands off until we can see some type of trend form. We can see some type of consistency on our waves being created and find some type of density of open states. So that is going to be my caution for the day. I'm going to be pretty picky with this, I would say. So NQ, similar story. We're currently making an H2 with a currently bullish candle right now, but we're not really that extended either way. We have opportunity up and opportunity down. We have an open state that's about 20 days old. It's at 25, 423. So about 100 points higher. It's kind of where that's going because we did fill some of these shorter term open states last week. So 25, 423 is an opportunity there. Let's go look at things like the 7 wave 60. Look at that. 7 wave 60 is just barely trading above pivot, but vector is still below pivot. No clarity here because we have that similar inconsistency between NQ and ES. Let's go look at our 20 wave 15. Man, could this be a better exact photo of ES, right? Vectors below pivot, prices above pivot. This is giving me a huge no man's land. We don't want to be trading this type of stuff right now. We've seen a lot of consolidation and messiness at Vector overnight. Huge hands off on Vector for NQ as well. Let's just look at a few more charts to see if there's any clarity here. So that's, oh, let me go to the 20 wave 15 first. 20 wave 15, same story as our other large time frames, right? Inconsistencies above and below. 10 wave 15, pretty similar to ES, right? We're starting to make this long wave. We haven't really tested supportive vector here on this trend. And the only opportunity we have is about 400 points up here, 24,879. We do have some stuff at 24,966. There's a couple clustered open states up here. If we can manage to get ourselves up, what is that? 500 points. It's a huge amount of distance away. So don't know if I'm going to be putting bets on that. And again, we don't want to be putting open states that high because it's possible we make short waves, come back long, and end up having revised open states. 7 wave 5. Wow, similar story. This is exactly the same as ES. We're below pivot, below vector, whereas some of our larger time frames are above pivot. 24,480 has an open state just past the 50% odds. 24,361 has a little bit of an older open state that's just past our 20% odds. So we have 24,361, 24,480. See if the 50 wave 1 minute's actually above or below. Same story as ES. 50 wave 1 minute is pretty overextended, but look at that. Supporting the thesis of us wanting to keep hands off on vector. Look at NQ. It finally decided to tap vector and is currently just totally disrespected it, kind of broke right under it. I bet if we go back to ES on that 50 wave 1 minute, we might see a similar story. So even though vector was forming a trend and we saw a little bit of support here, kind of disrespected it right there. Let me go look at the ES 50 wave 1 and see if it's doing the same thing. Yeah, ES is doing the same thing here. Kind of totally disrespected that vector, starting its way back down. So I don't know, guys. I'm pretty hands off today. I'm going to be watching New York session, of course, trading New York session, but I'm not going to be trading vector, and I'm going to be looking for consistencies across our different waves and our different time frames. So if I can give you guys anything today, I'm not going to give you levels. I'm going to give you some caution, right? That we're having inconsistencies on wave formations and we're having disrespected vector. So I would say trade patiently, trade smart. If your A plus setup does not come today, no one's telling you to trade, right? You always have the opportunity to not execute any trades and just observe, especially if the market conditions aren't in your favor. We do have a pretty large holiday this week. Thanksgiving is Thursday here in the United States. So we might be seeing a little bit of lower trading volume. So that's might be a good signal for us to be a little bit lighter size or potentially hands off this week as well. So That's all I have for you guys. I have no levels. I just have some cautions, unfortunately. So if you guys are in Ascend Premium, I will be seeing you in about 30 minutes to trade New York session. But otherwise, trade safe, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.